Brooklyn Independent Television.
New York is known for its many cultural institutions and museums. But did you know there's a museum located on Metropolitan Avenue housing everything from community-collected porcelain unicorns to a photographic archive of New York City street lampposts? It's a place where the forgotten and unusual come to be honored, reviewed, and remembered. Welcome to the Civic Reliquary.
City Reliquary is a small museum about New York City history. We're also a civic organization, and we do events around the city as well. A reliquary is something that houses a relic. It's a Catholic thing that they preserve pieces of saints and things like that. It's another way of saying museum. Dave was living here. I was running a wood shop around the corner. We had similar interests. I found this spot that he had started and said, oh, this is really interesting. We quickly became best friends. We started a nonprofit, and we are now this.
Well, the Reliquary serves as a museum that is accessible to the people, not only because we're in a populated area, but people don't feel as intimidated by a storefront museum as they may by the grand white columns of a larger scale institute.
Permanent exhibit is specifically New York City artifacts and ephemera. It's the odd things, it's the unrecognized things, but they're the things that are part of our everyday life.
Well, we have right here in this room the permanent collections, and that's basically items that come from all over the New York City area. Items have to have some relevance to the history of any of the 5 boroughs. Regardless of the fact that there's a lot of information here, we have some way to pare it down. And of course, Brooklyn seltzer bottles. Not just seltzer bottles, but seltzer bottles that originated from Brooklyn, because Brooklyn was at one point the epicenter of seltzer manufacturing. So when people first enter the museum, they pass through the turnstile, which to us is significant because it came from another local store that's been around and has its own local tradition here at Crest Hardware. And then directly to your right is a turnout coat from a local firehouse, the South Side, and it says right on there, Williamsburg Ladder 104 is the truck company there. Our World's Fair collection on a long-term loan from a very avid collector, Kyle Suppley. On the wall above it is the Jackie Robinson Shrine, featuring a painting by a local artist, Charles Kingo, also known as Black Dragon. And then in this corner we have what's labeled a history of burlesque in New York, which is actually a tribute to Little Egypt, who was made famous by the term hoochie coochie for the dance that she brought to the United States. So Petrola's Point was a newsstand that used to be located right at the corner of the Bowery and Canal Street by the entrance to the Manhattan Bridge. And it was founded by a man named Adam Petrola, who operated that newsstand for over 30 years. When he first started off, he worked for the New York Times. But he quickly tired of selling newspapers, and he started to pursue his own interest in art. And he would draw portraits of Bruce Lee, for instance, and then start to sell them to the people that came, tourists to Chinatown or even just local residents.
This last couple months is Slice Harvester, a blogger who's eating a slice of pizza from every place in Manhattan.
I said I never thought I'd have a photography show, and Bill said, well, you don't have a photography show. This is not a photography show. These photos on their own, they're bupkis, they're horrible pictures. But as a collection made up of all these individual cell phone pictures, that is what's impressive. It's about documenting the obsession. I would not have felt that sense of accomplishment if it hadn't been for this space, for the Reliquary, being there and giving me their support.
The first window were solely items relating to the history of the city. We wanted to show more about the people that live in it, and so we decided to open a second window and invite New Yorkers to show their collections. It could be anything that they found interesting and had amassed a certain amount of objects to present.
This month we have frogs, collectors who dislike frogs but decided to collect frogs as a joke. We create the venue, so there's the venue there, so people say, I have unicorns. Do you want to show unicorns? And we say, yeah, let's show unicorns. Let's create a unicorn exhibit.
Recently, Crest Hardware staged an event called Crest Fest. They've been doing this as a sort of an annual counterpart to their art show in the hardware store. In the last 2 years, they've actually hosted this as a way to benefit our museum. It's a great way that we can be involved with another community institution. So the City Reliquary is not only a museum, but a civic organization as well. And that's because we don't want to come across as being just a very static place. A museum can sometimes have a collection that grows old and dusty, and while we do appreciate that value, we also want to have this as an activity center. We host events on Havemeyer Street once a year. We shut down the whole block for something called Bicycle Fetish Day. We show the immense diversity of the people who all share that one two-wheeled form of transportation as a common interest.
The local leaves with the sense of pride about their neighborhood, about the city in its entirety, about the 5 boroughs, and I think a tourist leaves with a feeling of, intrigue for New York City.
We can tell people all about this significant landmark in our neighborhood because it's stuff, and it gives an object that serves as a point of departure to tell a story that could go on forever.
Download this program's podcast on iTunes. Keywords Brooklyn Independent Television.